Welcome to Nothing Without Us, stories and discussions about meaningful inclusion. We will talk about accessibility, true inclusion, and disability justice with stories, policy updates, discussions, and related commentary on the value of being accessible and inclusive. We believe life should be accessible for everyone, and everyone should be included in all aspects of life. I am your host, Annette Bourbonniere. I am a 70-ish year old woman with short gray hair and eyeglasses. I am sitting in a power wheelchair, and my service dog Kirby could show himself at some point during the podcast. This podcast is captioned. Please press the subscribe button at any time during the podcast if you have not already done so. It will not cost you anything, but it will help us make this podcast grow. You are also welcome to make comments in the chat and to give us feedback about what you do or do not like. We especially appreciate a thumbs up. In today's episode, I will talk about a very personal story that demonstrates what happens when good-hearted people see someone in trouble. I want to talk about it because there is so much hateful rhetoric these days, and this story refutes the hate behind that rhetoric. I'm going to mention the nationalities of the people involved. Not that that has any impact on what they did for me, but rather I'm mentioning it to demonstrate that people from all corners of the world are people with hearts and brains, and as individuals are very special. I was invited to a barbecue at the beginning of the semester. I looked forward to seeing some people that I don't see very often, and I was also in need of taking some time off. I'd been working very hard, and leaving the house to go have a good time with some wonderful people was one way to make myself take that time off. So just before I was leaving the house, my friend Emmy, the host of this event, called to ask me if I was willing to give someone a ride. A visiting professor lived not far from me and had not yet gotten her vehicle. I was happy to pick her up. We had a very enjoyable ride, a lot of good conversation on the way to Emmy's house. When we arrived, I told my new friend that I needed to take care of something personal. Anybody with a spinal cord injury knows what I'm talking about. And to tell Emmy that I would be there shortly. I parked my van about 2 houses down, and I prepared to back my wheelchair out of its lock. My wheelchair would not turn on. There had been no warning, and there was not even a click from the on-off switch. I checked for the connection that I could reach, and I lifted the controls off the chair to make sure there were no loose wires. Everything seemed to be connected, but nothing happened when I tried to turn it on. So after multiple event attempts to contact my friends, of course, their phones were off. They were at a party. I flagged down a neighbor who was just arriving home, and I asked her to let my friends know that I was stuck. Her response was, "I'm a therapist. Maybe I can help." Yes, just like that. This woman is an occupational therapist and immediately offered to help someone she'd never met before. I explained the situation, and she retrieved the supplies I needed to take care of my personal need, and then went to tell my friends what was going on. When she came back, she brought my friends, and all of us tried to figure out what was going on with the chair. At one point, there were 5 of us in the van trying to figure out if there was something that had been disconnected that could be reconnected. Unfortunately, we didn't find anything. So then the neighbor asked me what my plans were when I got home. Since there was no way I would be able to get out of my van unless the chair turned on, I told her that I would have to call the fire department to get me into my house. She then suggested that I might as well go to the party and enjoy myself before going home. That was a great idea. She said she would be around to help me get back into my van when I was ready to leave. So then I was surrounded by these people with such good hearts that That really seemed to be the best option. Little did I know it was going to get even better. At first, I was a little uncomfortable. This is not the kind of attention I like to get. The next thing we knew, my new friend asked me what the model number was on my chair, and she had her phone in her hand and told me that she was calling her husband in Israel to help because he was very good at reading manuals and tracing problems from them. While she was making that call with the information I gave her, a gentleman at the party that I had never met before came over and introduced himself. His name was Rahman, and he told me that he was an electrical engineer and offered to help me. Now, Rahman, while coordinating efforts with the gentleman in Israel, proceeded to follow the switches from the battery to my controls. They spent nearly 2 hours working on this. They eventually found that there was some dust in the switch controls. They removed it, tested performance, and put the controls back together on my chair. The saying goes, it takes a village. In this case, the village was pretty large, including the United States, Japan, Italy, Israel, and Bangladesh. I am eternally grateful for my village coming together to help me this way. I can only hope that people will learn to be open to the extraordinary power of inclusion. Thank you for listening. I'm Annette Bourbonniere from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion. Please hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. I appreciate all your comments. Tell us who you want to hear from and what issues you want to hear discussed. If you enjoyed this episode, please tell your friends and help this podcast grow. They can find us on patreon.com, Nothing Without Us, and on YouTube. And you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads. I am in the process of setting up a digital store on my Patreon website, which will have special content for subscribers, as well as additional content for paid subscribers. I will let you know when it is live. Until the next Nothing Without Us, I'm Annette Bourbonniere.